There's a moment, so small, so silent, it slips by almost unnoticed. She tilts her head, narrows her eyes, and asks a question that sounds harmless. Why are you being distant? What are you hiding? But it's not curiosity, it's a scalpel, testing the thickness of your skin. And most men, they bleed. They scramble for words, they explain, they justify, they try to clear the air. What they don't realize is, she wasn't asking for clarity, she was probing for weakness. Here's the dark truth. Women don't test to understand you, they test to see if they can control you. And when you explain yourself, even once, you shift the power. Your truth becomes a footnote in her narrative, her accusation becomes the script. Psychologists call it frame surrender, but Machiavelli called it suicide, because the moment you let someone else define the reality, you vanish. This isn't about gender. This is about power. And if you've ever found yourself defending your truth to someone who already made up their mind, you've already lost the trial you didn't know you were in. But here's the twist. The man who says nothing, he doesn't just survive, he becomes legend. It doesn't begin with shouting. It doesn't start with drama. No. The most dangerous power plays start with concern. Why didn't you tell me? You've been acting strange lately. You don't care about me like you used to, do you? And just like that, you're in the arena and the crowd doesn't even know the fight has started. She's not trying to understand you. She's trying to destabilize you. You think she's inviting you into a conversation, but what she's really doing is inviting you into a frame, her world, her emotions, her story. And the moment you step in to explain yourself, you've accepted the role of the defendant. You've handed over control. And now she holds the gavel. Because here's what most men never understand. Explaining is not clarity, explaining is submission. You try to sound logical. You say, I didn't mean it that way. You say, that's not what happened. You say, let me just explain. But what she hears is, I'm afraid of losing your approval. And that's the scent of weakness. Women don't fall for perfect men. They fall for men whose power feels untouchable, because when you speak with the need to be understood, you've already admitted, she matters more than your truth. And what started as a relationship of equals is now a performance, and you are the one dancing. Let me paint you a scene. She walks in, sees a name on your phone. Her voice is soft, too soft. Who's Emily? You panic, you explain. Oh, she's just a coworker. It was a team lunch. It wasn't even like that. But what just happened isn't about Emily. It's about the fact that your truth now depends on her emotional approval. And once you give her that kind of control, she doesn't trust you more. She trusts you less. Because the man who needs to explain is the man who can be shaken. And the man who can be shaken is the man who can be replaced. But the man who doesn't flinch, the man who lets her words hang in the air like unanswered riddles, that man becomes a mirror she can't escape. He reflects her emotion back at her, while remaining completely still. That stillness is what terrifies her, because now she's not sure. Did she cross a line? Did she just lose the one man who didn't bend? This is the trap most never escape. They believe relationships are built on expression, when in truth, they're tested through restraint. The game isn't to explain yourself better. The game is to learn when to say nothing at all, because power isn't in how loud you defend your name, it's in how little you need to. There's a war happening in every interaction, not with fists, not with words, but with frames. Who controls the story? Who defines the meaning? Who dictates reality? This invisible war is being fought every time someone accuses you, questions your intent, or makes you feel like you have to justify your existence. And here's the brutal truth most men don't realize. If you're explaining, you're not leading. Let that sink in. When she says, I don't feel like you're present anymore, it sounds like an invitation to open up. But it's actually a reframing of reality, because now the burden of proof is on you. You have to prove you're present. You have to explain your intentions. You have to jump through emotional hoops for her validation. And that's when you have lost the frame, because now she's not responding to you. You're reacting to her. And here's the Machiavellian secret most men were never taught. The person who reacts is the one being controlled. When you become emotionally predictable, when you rise to every accusation, when your truth depends on her interpretation, you've given her more than just your power. You've given her the blueprint to destroy you. But imagine this instead. She storms in, furious, her voice sharp. "Why didn't you call? I was worried sick." Most men panic. They scramble for justification. "I was working late. My phone died. I didn't think it was that big a deal." But the man who knows the frame war, he doesn't play in her arena. He pauses, looks her in the eye, and simply says, "If I were you, I'd be careful what story I tell myself." Boom. No anger, no defense, just quiet command. Now she's confused. Now she's on her heels. Now she starts questioning her emotional reaction. Because you didn't validate her panic. You didn't try to fix the moment. You made her sit in it and own it. That's not cruelty, that's power. Because the moment you stop reacting to her reality, you force her to question her own. You flip the script, you reverse the frame, and instead of being the defendant, you become the mirror. And mirrors are dangerous. They don't argue, they don't explain, they don't bend to emotion, they simply reflect. And in that reflection, she sees something unfamiliar, herself. That's why silence hits harder than any monologue. Because when a man refuses to defend himself, when he doesn't seek to be understood, when he remains unmoved, he becomes a man whose value isn't proven, it's felt. And no woman ever forgets the man who didn't try to explain why he was enough. She remembers him because she never figured him out. Let's get one thing crystal clear. Every emotional jab she throws isn't just about you. It's about control. It's not, "Why didn't you answer your phone?" It's, "Can I rattle his calm?" It's not, "You've changed." It's, "Will he reshape himself to win me back?" These are not conversations. They're compliance checks. And most men, they fail. They try to soften her storm. They say things like, "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please just listen to my side." But here's the Machiavellian truth. The moment you seek understanding, you've already accepted defeat. Because in her world, emotion isn't about fairness, it's about dominance. And if she senses that her emotions can direct your actions, then you're no longer a man. You're an emotional puppet. But there's a counter, a subtle, brutal counter. It's called emotional judo. You don't resist, you don't explain, you don't retreat. You let her force hit air, then use its momentum against her. Let's break this down with brutal clarity. Tactic 1. Reframe without apology. She says, "You're manipulating me." The weak man says, "No, I'm not, I was just trying to help." But the Machiavellian calmly replies, "It's funny how power looks like manipulation to people who feel none." Boom. You didn't deny it, you reframed it, and now she's the one squirming. Tactic 2. Silence is your sword. She blurts, "Maybe we're just wrong for each other." Most men panic, they beg, they plead. "Please don't say that, let's talk." You give her a long, unblinking stare and respond with, "If that's how you feel, then I respect it." Then you walk away, not out of anger, but with a calm she can't comprehend. That moment will haunt her, because it wasn't a breakup, it was an unanswered question. Tactic 3. Short, sharp status lines. She accuses, "You've been distant." The average man tries to explain his behavior, but you say, "Distance is just silence unrespected." She says, "You're cold." You respond, "Stillness isn't cold, it's control." And these are not explanations, they're frictionless boundaries, delivered with zero emotion. And every time she tries to pierce your frame, she hits something she wasn't prepared for: immovable presence. Emotional judo is not about manipulation. It's about refusing to be manipulated. It's about recognizing that reaction is currency, and the moment you spend it, you go bankrupt in her eyes. Because if you can't regulate yourself, how could you ever lead her? Understand this: the most dangerous man isn't the one who fights back. It's the one who doesn't need to. The one who makes her fight her own emotions. The one who knows that every accusation is not a threat, but a test. And when you pass that test, not with explanations, but with stillness, you don't just earn respect. you become the standard. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels like a thunderstorm just outside your window. Still, but charged. And when used right, that silence doesn't just protect your power, it multiplies it. Here's the dark psychology behind it. Women don't fear words. They fear not knowing. They fear what they can't decode. Because silence, true, controlled, unflinching silence, creates a vacuum. And nature, especially emotional nature, hates vacuums. So, what happens when you go silent? When you don't defend, don't react, don't explain? She starts filling that vacuum. Not with truth, but with fear. Did I go too far? Is he done with me? What is he thinking? Why isn't he chasing me? She spirals. Because silence doesn't just withhold answers, it throws the entire narrative back in her face. Let me show you how it plays out. She says something sharp, something cutting. You've changed. You used to care. You don't flinch. You don't reply. You hold the eye contact, then look away. Cool, calm, like her words bounced off your skin. That moment, that's not passive, that's psychological warfare, because now she doesn't know where she stands. And when a woman can't place you, she starts chasing the version of you she can't control. That's not rejection, that's obsession. Let's go deeper, she texts. We need to talk. You feel the old instinct rise, the urge to fix it, to explain, to just say one thing. But instead, you leave her on red. Why? Because you understand that when you break silence first, you're not just answering, you're surrendering. But when you hold it, she texts again, then again. She sends voice notes. She posts quotes about emotionally unavailable men. And suddenly, she's no longer confronting you. She's performing for you. She's the one chasing clarity now. She's the one narrating every scene to a ghost. She's the one feeling the weight of something she can't control. That's when your absence becomes louder than any apology ever could. Here's the psychological breakdown. Silence equals ambiguity. Ambiguity equals mystery. Mystery equals emotional investment. Emotional investment equals obsession. Because when she can't read you, she can't forget you. The predictable man, he's dissected and discarded. The mysterious one, he's replayed. And when she finally breaks down, when she asks, "Do you have nothing to say?" you calmly reply, "Not anymore." And just like that, her entire emotional game crumbles, because she thought she was playing chess. But you were already off the board. This is not about manipulation, it's about self-possession. When you stop trying to prove yourself, when you let your silence speak, when you become unreadable, you trigger something deeper than attraction. You trigger reverence, because a man who doesn't explain is a man she can't forget. There's a moment at the end of every test, a pause, a breath, a final chance to prove yourself, defend yourself, explain yourself. And that's where most men break. They think, if I just say it right, she'll understand. If I open up, she'll see I'm not the villain. If I explain what really happened, maybe she won't leave. But here's the brutal truth. She already decided. She's not waiting for your words. She's measuring your reaction. Because to her, your final explanation isn't clarity, it's closure. And once she gets closure, she gets control. That's why the strongest move you can make isn't to speak, it's to vanish. No breakdown, no performance, no desperate Hail Mary texts, just gone, with your dignity intact. Let's talk about the men who did just that. Case study 1, the CEO who let the rumor die. Accused of betrayal. Headlines screamed his name. He was called arrogant, dismissive, guilty by silence. But he said nothing. 6 months passed, people got bored, the truth surfaced. The accuser had fabricated everything. He was asked why he never defended himself. He replied, "Because truth doesn't beg to be believed." And just like that, he won. Not by arguing, not by defending, but by refusing to kneel. Case study 2, the man she couldn't replace. A woman told her boyfriend, "You're emotionally unavailable. You've changed." Most men would have defended, pleaded, explained. He didn't. He looked at her, said, "You knew who I was before you tried to change me." Then he packed his bag and left. No fight, no revenge, no posts, just silence. A year later, she texted him, "You were right. I just didn't understand your silence." He never replied, and she never forgot him. Because men who vanish in silence leave echoes louder than words. This is the final Machiavellian law: aura over explanation. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to be seen as good. You don't need to be understood. You need to be felt. And nothing is felt more deeply than the presence of a man who doesn't beg for validation. That's why the men who are most remembered are often the ones who never spoke. They left behind no story, just a silhouette, a question that never got answered. Why didn't he fight for me? Was he really that cold? Did I lose something I'll never get back? Those aren't regrets, they're hauntings. So the next time you're tempted to explain, to type out a long message, to plead, defend, or clarify, don't. Instead, say less, then say nothing. And let the silence do what words never could, make them feel the loss. Because at the end of all of this, when the dust settles, when the voice notes stop, when the drama collapses under its own weight, she won't remember what you said. She'll remember what you didn't. She'll remember the stare that didn't blink, the calm that didn't break, the man she couldn't decode and never got to rewrite. That's not cruelty, that's legend. And in a world that begs for explanation, the man who walks away silently becomes the story she never stops telling.